Hi, I'm Candace Mallet, political editor of Blavity Politics, and we're here with presidential candidate Tom Steyer.
Candace, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming. We're so happy to have you here. Something I like to ask each candidate that comes here is, why are you running and, why now?
Look, I'm running for a very simple reason, which is this government is broken. It's been purchased by corporations. It's not even trying to serve the American people. Look, when we think about all the progressive policies that we all want, we're not going to get any of them until we take back the government from the corporations who bought it and get back to government of by and for the people. And for the last 10 years, I've been putting together coalitions of American citizens to take on those corporations, to take on what I think of as unchecked corporate power. And for a decade, we've been winning. I've taken on oil companies and beaten them, tobacco companies. They'd won 17 times in a row and we beat them. Taken on drug companies and utilities. And I've also started one of the largest grassroots organizations in the United States, Next Gen America, which, among other things, organizes people, young voters, the largest age group in America, bigger than the baby boomers, all you guys, the most diverse age group in American history, and the most progressive age group in America, and one that was voting at half the rate of other Americans. And so, why am I running? Because I believe in the people of the United States, not the corrupt elites. I believe in power to the people. I'm talking about a lot of structural things no one else will even talk about, like term limits of 12 years for Congress people and senators, of direct democracy, that people can pass our own laws.
Hi, my name is Kyland. I'm from Victorville, California.
Where's
small
Victorville?
Town. Very small town in between like LA and Vegas.
Okay.
Desert
That's
place.
a big place.
Yeah. yes. There's a lot of empty land there. But no, my question is around, when you announced your candidacy, Bernie Sanders said that, I'm tired of seeing billionaires try to buy political power. So my question would be, what's your response to that? And then how do you plan on combating all of the criticisms around your billionaire status?
Look, my opinion, what I've done for 10 years is this. When I've seen something what I think is really wrong in America, I've put in all my time and all my energy and money to try and correct it. And that involves fights with all of these corporations. It involves grassroots organizing for a long time, one of the biggest organizations. It means starting the need to impeach movement. When all of the Washington insiders from both sides of the aisle told me how crazy that was to actually stand up for what's right and wrong in the United States of America. So in this case, the reason I'm running is there was something, I didn't want to run. In fact, I ran because I saw something happening that I thought was wrong, which is this. People were talking about the different policy differences in healthcare and the Green New Deal and education, criminal justice, everything, none of which was getting done and none of which no one was leveling with the American people, that this is not on offer until we take back the government, that we're not getting Medicare for all or a public option unless we break the power of the drug companies and the private hospitals and the insurance companies.
Hi, my name is Sabine. I'm a resident of Los Angeles, California. My question to you is, wealth inequality is at its all-time highest right now. And so, we touched a little bit on your billionaire status. Why should Americans trust someone who is a billionaire like you to do what's best for the poorest Americans?
I started a business from scratch with $0 from my parents and built it into a pretty big business over 27 years, a big international business. Then I took the giving pledge to give the bulk of my money to good causes while I'm alive. I walked away from it, and I've been organizing on the full-time in the grassroots ever since. Look, in my opinion, if I hadn't spent years full-time talking to Americans to understand what people's lives are really like, then you could say I've been living in a bubble, but I've been living in the opposite of a bubble. I have traveled around this country to see people from different backgrounds, different geographies, different needs, different ages, to make sure, and frankly, it's been the best experience of my life. And one of the things I'd say is this: look, I'm saying these corporations have bought the government. The income inequality, to me, is the proof. Working Americans have not had a raise in 40 years. All of the money, all of the increase in income has gone to the richest Americans and to the biggest corporations. That's why I was for a wealth tax long before I was running for president. I said we need a wealth tax to redress what has been a redistribution of wealth in this society from the bulk of people to the very richest. If you look at what I'm talking about from a policy standpoint, I would undo all of the tax breaks for the richest people and corporations, and I'll take you through it because honestly, it's disgusting. And when you go around the country and see what it means, it's an emotional experience, because what you see is exactly what I said. You see people suffering and cruelty.
Hi, Mr. Steyer.
Hey,
I'm
call me Tom.
Tom.
We're in California, and everybody does it. Around the country, they're like, what?
Okay,
Like,
hey,
no.
Tom. So I'm Karika. I'm from Simi Valley, California, and I'm curious to know, what are your 3 key priorities for your agenda for presidency?
3. So look, my number 1 priority, let's start with that, that's easy, is climate. We don't have a choice. We've got to deal with this crisis. But let me talk about climate for a second, because I've been working on this for over a decade, and I believe that I think about it differently and with a different priority from every single other person running for president. First of all, I actually have a history of doing it. I started politically on this, beating oil companies in 2010 with the No on 23 campaign. But the keys are, 1, we have to do it. So I declare a state of emergency on day 1. Use the emergency powers of the presidency, because we have to do that. We have to get going. It actually is a crisis. 2, everything that I've done that has to do with energy or climate or pollution, I start with environmental justice. Because if you want to get the right policy, then let's start with the communities where you can't breathe the air safely or drink the water healthily. Those are Black and brown communities across this country. We all know who lives in Flint. We all know who lives in the Inner Valley in California. I went to a place called Denmark, South Carolina, to talk about water problems that were killing people, where they've refused to buy them a water treatment facility. Secondly, look, in terms of economics, we have to undo the injustice. I mean, what we were describing earlier about income inequality is something where we have seen this happen in income and even more in wealth. So when we think about fairness, the right to a living wage is something which is, that this is injustice at its heart. 1 job should be enough to support a family. The wages haven't kept up. There have been laws passed to basically take away the rights of working people. Mm-hmm. And so pushing back on economic justice across this country, that is at the very heart of justice. On the first day of my presidency, I will start a formal commission on race, because I believe that policy comes out of narrative. So the first thing we have to do is retell the last 400 years of what's happened in this country. And African Americans say to me, not infrequently, Tom, we know that. And I say, yeah, I know you know that, but that doesn't mean the other people in this country know that. And it's not just a question of detailing injustice, not that there isn't plenty to detail. It's also a question of detailing contribution. That, hundreds of years of contribution, including very specifically moral leadership in this country. The African American community has been the center of moral leadership, not for years or decades, but for centuries. And so telling that out of narrative comes policy.
My question is, when did you consciously decide to fight for the state of the planet?
So let me put it this way. When I was running an investment firm, we invested in every part of the economy, including specifically fossil fuels. It was never disproportionate. I mean, people talk about it disproportionately, but actually it was less than the amount in our economy, but we definitely did it. And somewhere around 12 years ago, I realized, and I wish I'd been smarter, oh my God, there's this terrible unintended consequence of having a fossil fuel-driven economy, which all of us have grown up in, and which has been a staple of American society for all of our lives. That's how we got to work. That's how we got to school. That's how we heated our houses. But it's just an assumption. And I realized, oh my God. So what I did was I divested. This is long before I was in any kind of political situation. I divested because I wanted to make sure that what I was investing with stood up for my values. And I started not just trying to not do the bad thing, but actually to organize around the idea that we need to arrest climate change. And so what I'm asking people to do, and I also took, as I said, the giving pledge to give away the bulk of my money, period, while I'm alive, to good causes. But really what I was saying is this: I'm asking Americans to do, all you guys, I'm assuming you probably have done it, so that's, unnecessary to say, to do exactly what I did, which is to realize, look, we didn't fill up our cars with gas in order to do a bad thing. We filled up our cars with gas to get to the store. But now we have to realize we can't do that. That there's something that we didn't know about that's absolutely critical, and we can still get in our car and get to the store, and we can do it cheaper and better.
Hi, Tom. Hi. I'm Jove Coleman. I'm from Canton, Ohio, originally. So just to piggyback on his question, if you are elected, what are the 3 major things that you would do to fight the climate crisis?
Well, as I said, I would declare a state of emergency on day one.
Okay.
And I think that involves, there are a lot of things that you can do as president with a state of emergency in terms of determining how energy is generated. The term is renewable portfolio standard. We can say, okay, by this time, you have to be making this much of your energy in terms of fossil fuel free. And so I've actually passed some of those things here in California. I've led props to do that, and outside California too. So that's one thing. We can do building codes. You can say the building is going to have to be renovated in an energy efficient and fossil fuel free way, and that, you can say. We're going to have to change transportation. In the United States of America, or I'd say in California, transportation is our biggest source of greenhouse gases. Okay. We have an ability to do this differently. We're in Los Angeles, California. I worked hard on Measure M, public transportation for people in Los Angeles, California. When we did it, people thought that it would create 500,000 jobs. The estimates are now 778,000 jobs. Rebuilding, that's Los Angeles County, big county, right. A lot of people. But still, rebuilding the United States of America is a gigantic job plan. So one is I declare the state of emergency. 2, look, the justice part of this is huge. One of the things that I'm sure you guys do know, but not everybody in America knows, is who is an environmentalist. There's an image that I think is false in the media about who cares about this stuff. So just who actually cares? Number 1, Latinos. Number 2, African Americans. Number 3, Asian Americans. So when I say justice-based climate plan, it is absolutely critical for this to work and for it to be moral and for us to get the right policy, that actually we go and get leadership and direction from those communities to make sure that the way we're doing this actually will serve the people who care about this the most for good reasons, because it's affecting them and their kids.
I just wanted to get your viewpoint if you feel like Billionaire should be contributing to redistributing the wealth to enslaved African Americans who have been systemically held back financially.
Yes. Look, the way that this is, we need a progressive tax code for everything. We don't have one. There was a long time ago, maybe a decade ago, Warren Buffett said, I pay a lower tax rate than my secretary. It wasn't true. It is now true. So when you ask, that's the reason I'm for a wealth tax. One of the things I said was, I said this week, I don't think people have paid a hell of a lot of attention to it. I said, look, we should be trading income for people as income, whether it comes from passive investments, long-term capital gains, dividend income. Why does that get a lower tax rate than somebody going to work? And I said, no, income to people is just income. And if we do that, make that change, we can give a 10% tax cut to 95% of Americans. I'm for that. So when you say, should we have a progressive tax code? Should the richest Americans be contributing disproportionately to reparations or any other of the things we need to fund, to the HBCUs, to fund all the what I think of as changing, contributing to end the differential between school districts in terms of what they spend? Yeah, it's got to be disproportionate because we want a progressive tax code. That's why, and the wealth tax is specifically comes in for people who have more than $32 million of assets. It's disproportionate, and it hits people who are richer, which is fair. Because what's happened is this system, without saying anything, has disproportionately favored them at the expense of everybody else.
So I have a two-part question. So do you consider yourself a moderate or a progressive? And why should Black millennials specifically vote for you?
I'm a progressive. Look, I'm somebody, if you look at my history in terms of support, specifically, you can look at the policies I've put out, and I think they're wonderful, but I'm not just making up policies from nowhere. Look, my wife and I started a community bank dedicated to the idea of economic justice, environmental sustainability, and support businesses owned by women and people of color. To basically, where they redlined, we greenlined. We started probably 15 years ago. It's a nonprofit bank. We'll never get anything back from it. We had to get a federal license to do it because you have to do that. It's over $1 billion. We measure every single loan in terms of impact on the community. Jobs created, businesses supported, low-income housing units financed. Every loan is supposed to be positive for the community. And we measure it. And, we had to come up with the measures because that's not how banks run banks. Banks run banks based on what is the return in terms of principal and interest over time.
Well, thank you so much. I know. That was a lot.
I told you you'd
I'm
have
so
to throw me out.
No. This has been great. Thank you so much for being here. And any final thoughts or final
Look, I'll tell you one
words?
other thing, which you guys probably know because I say it. I have a history of working for justice. I believe, I wasn't saying this to be nice to you guys. I say this to people who are not African Americans, who may not like what I'm saying. African American community has been the moral center of this country for centuries. So to me, this election is going to be determined largely by the African American community.
Thank you.